Once again, it's on. You know what time it is. It's time to play some toss. Welcome, everyone, to episode 63 of the Tristain Sports Show Toss, the final episode of the year 2020. I'm glad we almost through this year. It is your main man, T-Square, Tristain Thomas. Thank you all so very much for joining us this week. What we got going down on Toss this week? Well, we got to go through state of the state. We got to talk about Green Bay Packers football. They throttled the Titans. What does that mean? And the Milwaukee Bucks, they're in season. They've been through 4 games, up, down, up, down. But can you really make a judgment about them? We'll discuss. In the Toss sweep, we have Week 17 playoff scenarios. The final week of the regular season of the NFL is here. We will get to all that, but you guys know how we get things started here on Toss. We get things started like we always do. State of the state, and let's go to the Green Bay Packers. They throttled, as I said, the Tennessee Titans, 40-14. Things got a little bit hairy in the third quarter. Titans were able to not tie the game, but they were able to get close. Made it a 19-14 game after Ryan Tannehill rushed straight up the gut for 45 yards. Got the touchdown, and you go on Twitter and you just see everybody just losing their damn minds. Oh, here we go again. It's a repeat of the Panthers game from last week. It's a repeat of what's been going on all season long. These guys just can't put together a complete game. They just can't beat a good team, a winning team. After Tannehill made it a 19-14 game, cut into that 14-7 lead, or excuse me, that 19-7 lead of the Green Bay Packers, and made it 19-14, still Packers leading by 5. The Packers just went on a tear. This offense was as lethal as it had ever been. You were without Jamal Williams, so that hurt you a little bit in the running game. But did it really? Because you got Aaron Jones, who had 94 yards on 10 carries. He was missing for most of the first half because of a minor hip injury. He got tackled really funny, landed really hard. He was dealing with the toe issue as it is. But to come out and still give you 94 yards on 10 carries, that put him over the 1,000-yard mark on the season for the second consecutive year. To have a guy come back, and I love this guy. I love the pick. Although at the time, when they did draft him, I asked the question on Twitter at D20Double. Hey, I've seen the guy play at BC. I know what he can possibly bring to the table if he does, in fact, get time. Because that was my first question. Will he see the field? We know that one of the positions that's easiest to translate into the NFL is running back. Now, I'm not going to go out there and say, oh, it's easily transferable. It's automatic. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that there is more chance, a better chance of a running back translating from the college game to the NFL game faster and a little bit easier than, let's say, a wide receiver or quarterback or anyone on defense. But I love the pick, and I love the guy, and I love saying his name, A.J. the Sauce Dillon. I've said this multiple times on the Toss blog on tossnationmedia.com. I've said this multiple times on this show. When it gets to this kind of weather, and it was snowing and windy and cold, it was Lambeau Field weather, that Lambeau mystique, that snow globe, that winter weather, that teams fear coming to play in. At this time of the year, when they come to Green Bay, you had all of that, the cold, the wind, the snow. It's exactly what you wanted. It's exactly what you wanted to send a message, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But when you get to this time of the year, close to playoff time, you want to be able to do two things: play physical defense, which we are seeing the Packers do. We'll get to that in a little bit. And run the football. A.J. Dillon, A.J. the Sauce Dillon, Quadzilla, whatever you want to call him, is built to run the football in this kind of weather. At this time of the year, he is built for it, and that is why I was so excited about the pick. Even though I'm thinking, do we need to go elsewhere? Do we need to, maybe pick up a wide receiver? Do we need to do something different? Do we need to do something on defense? Do we really need a running back? But at the same time, you know what he was bringing to the table if you watched any Boston College games, which I had. Couldn't believe that the Packers were able to snag that guy. I can't believe he slipped down where he did for the Packers to be able to get him. But I digress. He had his best game as a pro, his first 2 touchdowns, his first 100-yard rushing game, his first 20-plus carry game. Provided the Packers with that balance that you need when they were without Aaron Jones on multiple drives. This is the type of guy you want running the football when the weather gets cold, because he is a bowling ball of butcher knives. That is the type of runner you need. And the Titans have that kind of runner in Derrick Henry, who still leads the NFL rushing yardage, but he didn't get 100 on the Packers. Let's talk about that defense a little bit. I said, and I was absolutely certain, and last week on this program, I said I was worried about this game. I said that Derrick Henry would go for 200-plus yards and multiple scores because I was worried about that running defense. Now, I did also say that the running defense and the defense as a whole was playing far better over the last few weeks. They've been getting to the quarterback. They've been getting home. Rashawn Gary has been putting in some wonderful performances. Zadarius Smith continues to be the consistent, dangerous pass rusher. They're putting him all over the field. You're starting to see Darnell Savage step up a little bit. You're starting to see why they went and signed Adrian Amos in free agency. Jair Alexander continues to be the lockdown, shutdown corner. You put a guy on him, or you put him on a guy, you might as well just forget about that receiver. They're not going to be involved. And again, he shut out Corey Davis. Chris Barnes, Kamal Martin at the linebacker spot. We already know what the line can do. You got Kenny Clark up there. You got Kingsley Keke up there. Those guys are getting the job done. Now, I worried about that because it's like, okay, they've been on a pretty good run these last few weeks. But now you're going up against the NFL's leading rusher. This is what has beaten you over the past few years. A team that can run the football, a team that can possess the football and keep your potent offense on the sideline, shorten the game, give you very few possessions, and score every time they go down the field. And they run it down your throats. This is the team. This is the team that can do that. Can you stop Derrick Henry and make Ryan Tannehill, who is a more than capable quarterback, beat you? And they have really good receivers. Jonnu Smith at tight end. Corey Davis, as I mentioned before, who got shut down by Jair Alexander. A.J. Brown, the rookie. Or excuse me, he was a rookie last season. This is his second year. Having a really good year. Can you make Ryan Tannehill beat you with those guys? What Mike Pettin did in Sunday night's game, 6 down linemen, 1 linebacker. He basically went to his DBs and said, it's up to you guys. We are going to put you guys on islands by yourselves for most of the night in order to stop Derrick Henry. And you need to come up. And they did. but it doesn't work on the back end if it doesn't work on the front end. And up front, what Pettin did, he came in with a masterful game plan, and the players executed beautifully. They stopped Derrick Henry. 23 carries for 98 yards. He had a streak of 9 100-yard rushing games snapped. 9 straight snapped. I don't think very many people saw that coming. I know I didn't. And I couldn't be more happy to be so wrong. Now, I mentioned a message. Packers have heard everybody talk about, oh, they can't win a game against a decent team. They heard that, oh, they can't go out there and stop the run. They've heard, oh, they can't play a complete game. All those very legitimate worries coming into this ball game. But if it showed you anything, Sunday night showed you that it wasn't just a response to all those worries and all those criticisms. It was a warning. The Packers are very much still in the hunt for number 1 seed. Now, because Seattle clinched the NFC West in their victory over the Rams, and man, Jared Goff breaking and dislocating his thumb. He's more than likely out for their Week 17 game where they really need to win to try to even get into the playoffs now. Division is no longer an option. But because Seattle won, that took off the clinching the number 1 seed off the table for Sunday night's game against Tennessee. But so you're still very much in a hunt for the number 1 seed. You have to go and take care of business next week. We'll get to that in a minute. But it was a message because Aaron Rodgers has said it multiple times this season. Of all of my NFC championship games, they've all been on the road. We've never had home field advantage for the NFC title game. I want teams to have to come up to Lambeau and try to beat us here in this weather, in this stadium, on this field. Good luck. What this does is it sets up a very high stakes football game on Sunday. Now, this game was flexed from noon to 3:25 Central Standard Time because of the implications. The Packers very much in play for the number 1 seed. They have to win in order to secure it. That's all they have to do. You can't worry about what Seattle's doing. You can't worry about what New Orleans is doing. You have to go out there and win. The Chicago Bears have a playoff berth on the line. They have to win. They're going to go all out. It's always been said that the Packers are pretty much going to go all out. They want this number 1 seed. David Bakhtiari has already gone on the record and saying that they need to treat, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said they need to treat the Bears game as the wild card game, meaning they need to be in playoff mode so they could win, go home the next week, enjoy the games, heal up, practice, and get ready for more playoff football. And I couldn't agree more. They have to treat this as a playoff game. You have everything on the line here. You could easily go from being the number 1 seed to being the number 3 seed. It's very possible. Or the number 2 seed. But either way, you have a chance of losing out on that coveted first round bye. And this team could use a bye. They had their bye week relatively early. They could use a week to heal up and get some of the guys with some nagging injuries or just return from injury and, kind of still playing back into shape to get another week to kind of heal up. but it's high-stakes football from here on out. You have a high-stakes game on Sunday afternoon in Chicago. Seems like that's always, at least over the last few years, that's kind of been the way it's gone for a game against Chicago in the final week of the regular season. It's usually always something on the line. But it's all there for you. It's all there for you. Win, you're the number one seed. You have a first round bye. You set yourself up for home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs. Big time possibility that you could get that NFC championship game at home for the first time in quite some time. I believe it was since 2007. I believe 2007, 2008 NFC championship game, whichever, I forget the year, but it was the year that Brett Favre threw the interception in overtime. And Giants went on to win that game, beat the undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl. Still stings. But that is the last NFC championship game to be held at Lambeau Field. It's been a while. You've made multiple appearances since then, but it's been a while since you've had one at your house. You have the opportunity to get on the road to do that. All you have to do is go down to Chicago, beat the Bears, who are fighting for a playoff spot of their own. And how ironic, because it was not that long ago, the Packers had to win their final regular season game to get into the playoffs. Chicago went all out. Green Bay went all out. It turned out to be a fantastic football game last week of the regular season at Lambeau Field. Packers won, and that began their run into the Super Bowl, which they won, Super Bowl 45. So now the tables are kind of flipped. The Packers now have a chance to knock the Bears out of the playoffs. And you have to do it. In order to secure the number one seed, you have to win, period. That is the only thing you need to be focused on. Forget what Seattle's doing. Forget what New Orleans is doing. You need to go and win. High stakes football on Sunday. Continuing on State of the State here on Toss, let's talk the Milwaukee Bucks. And I take a deep breath about talking about the Milwaukee Bucks because people frustrate me when they talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. It's a 72-game season this season, 2020, 2021. Not even a full season, not the full gamut of 82 games. 72, close to a full season, but it's 72 games. After tonight's action, you have just made it through 4 of those ball games. It's still early. But I'll get to that point in a minute. When I do my outline for Toss, I kind of just go through the information that we have at the time, and I look for other information, and I do my research, and I put in time into the show. I don't just get behind this mic and spit hot fire like I'm Dylan. I put some thought into it. I put some research into it. I talk to people. I try to make the best possible program I can for you. So the information I have here was all before. Well, most of it was before tonight's game against the Miami Heat, as we record this program on a Tuesday night for premiere on a Wednesday night. The Bucks were 1-2 at the time. And as I'm doing my research and I'm reading through stats and I'm trying to make things make sense, and I'm poring over, game footage from the past 3 games. I'm connecting the dots and making things make sense. And I'm fortunate that there's the Bucks on national television on TNT, even though they inexplicably cut away from the Bucks because they were dog walking the Heat. Now, I take a little bit of personal satisfaction over this dog walking. It's not going to make up for a playoff loss, but damn, does it feel good to go and dog walk them. Now the Bucks are 2-2. Same as last year. But if you look on Bucks Twitter, if you just look at Twitter in general, NBA Twitter in general, you see people talking about the Bucks like they're an absolute mess. Like they're a joke. Like they're going to be the 15-win Milwaukee Bucks from a few years ago. This ain't that squad. Bucks went into Miami and dog walked them. They were up 83-51 at the half. They ended up winning that ball game 144-97. Let me hit you with that again, because this is not NBA 2K where somebody has it on the easiest mode and they just go in and just blow people out. 144-97 was the final of this ball game in favor of the Milwaukee Bucks. They bring their record up to 2-2. They broke the record for most three-pointers made in the game with 29. The rookie Sam Merrill out of Utah State hit the record tying 3 at 28. Then the record was broken a couple minutes later with 29. And man, does he have a great shot. Jordan Moore as well, beautiful shot. Those are guys who need to get more time, but we'll get to that in a second. Bucks have been up and down. They lost their season opener to Boston on a miracle garbage shot by Jason Tatum. Let's call it what it is. It went in. If it went in, you got to say, hey, it was a good shot. But let's be clear. Giannis played the best possible defense you could play on that shot. And Tatum banked it in. It was so bad, it banked in and went in. So you lose that game. Okay, Boston, decent team on the rise. Dust yourself off, try it again. You come into Christmas Day against the Warriors, who just looked absolutely terrible and got blown out themselves at Brooklyn. KD, Kyrie looking really good. You blow them out. Now you get to New York, and everybody's just penciling that in as a win. But this is the NBA. Anybody can be beaten on any given day. And it's early. You're still trying to gel. You're still trying to put your pieces together. You're still trying to put your rotations together. You're still trying to learn each other with a big roster overturn. This thing ain't fully cooked yet. And you get blown out by the Knicks. You go 7 for 38 against the Knicks from three-point range. 7 for 38. Then you come into tonight against the Miami Heat. And you hit 29 three-pointers in a game, an NBA record. You cannot, it is impossible to have a verdict on what this team will be after 3 or 4 games. It is impossible. I've said it many times on Toss. I've said it many times on Home Court Sports and other podcasts that I've been guest on. I typically wait 25 to 30 games to really equate what a team will be. Now, sometimes teams will struggle. Maybe they have some injuries. Maybe they had a roster overturn. 25 games don't have it together, and then they just get hot. Blow all expectations out the water. That happens sometimes. But typically, from what I've seen in all my years of being around this game and analyzing this game and studying this game and watching this game, 25 to 30 games gives you a good measure on what a team is going to be. That is a good enough chunk of the season to tell a story on what this team is going to be. And we're only at 4, and people are acting as if it's the end of the world. This team is going to suck. This team is not going to make it past the first round if they make it to the playoffs at all. Just all of these absolutely ridiculously stupid takes that annoyed the absolute hell out of me. It is impossible to have a verdict on what the team will be after only 3 or 4 games. Stop it. You're making yourselves look even. I'm not going to insult the people that do that because that would just be going low. But you're making yourselves look absolutely idiotic. Because it's early. And team, like I said, you're trying to get your rotations together. These guys are still trying to learn each other. You go 7 for 38 in New York. An anomaly. The Bucks aren't going to shoot 7 for 38 on a consistent basis. I can promise you that. You shoot 7 for 38 against the New York Knicks. But then you look at the other side of it. When they're good, when the Bucks are on from distance. And they're a combined 51.6% shooting from three in the games against Boston, Golden State, and Miami. It is a stark contrast from that 7 for 38 showing against the Knicks. It's a huge contrast. That is why you cannot have a verdict on what a team's going to be after 3 or 4 games. Stop pretending as if you have the answers as to what this team is going to be after not even 5 ball games. And even after 5 ball games, you still can't tell. Stop trying to act like you know what this team is going to be and what the future is going to be and how this team is going to turn out after only less than a handful of games. It's so frustrating to see that. You have to give this some time. Speaking of time, Mike Budenholzer has some guys who have shown in these handful of games. And again, I don't like to really break down the team. I really don't like to analyze the team because I don't know what this team is going to be. We're not at that 25 game to 30 game threshold yet. But based on what I have seen in these first 4 games, your rookies that you've drafted can shoot the basketball pretty consistently. Bryn Forbes, he has shot the basketball pretty decently. Pat Connaughton, not so much. There needs to be some sort of adjustment with your rotations if you're Mike Budenholzer. Now, I will say that in tonight's game against the Heat, he did not immediately go to Pat Connaughton off the bench. A small bit of progress. And I'm not blaming all the bench woes on Pat Connaughton. I'm not going to do that. But he has definitely not played up to the caliber that we've accustomed to seeing him play past couple of seasons. But let me break this down a little bit further. You remember how everybody was complaining that Mike Budenholzer wasn't playing Giannis and Bledsoe and Middleton enough minutes? And at first, everyone was like, okay, he's just saving them for playoff time. That's great time management. Even I've said it myself. Man, this is great load management. You're playing them very little minutes. You're still able to go out there and blow teams out. This is reminiscent of what Golden State was. There were games when Golden State was ascending and becoming their championship selves where you didn't see Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Draymond Green play in like the second half of the third quarter all the way through the fourth quarter. There were games where they were literally playing like 2.5 games, like 2.5 quarters. Bucks were like that, blowing teams out. You could sit Giannis, you could sit Middleton, you could sit Brook Lopez, you could sit Eric Bledsoe. Get these other guys on the bench some time. Save their bodies for the playoffs. And then the playoffs will roll around, and these guys are still playing like 30, 31 minutes. No, Budenholzer. You got to go out there and play your absolute best, and you need to play them close to 40 minutes a game. It's playoff time. It's time to put all that low. They could go and rest and recover in the offseason. You've played them very little minutes. It's time to go out there and reap the rewards of that. They should be fresher than most. And he just wouldn't do it. With the trades that John Horst, Bucks GM, made, took away a little bit of depth from that bench, little bit of experience from that bench. He forced Budenholzer's hand to make him play his starters a little bit more. He literally, like, you look at all the moves, he forced Budenholzer to have to play his best a few more minutes. Now, there have been a couple blowouts both ways where Budenholzer has had to take Giannis and Middleton and Holiday out. But if you see the results of the bench, you've seen what the bench has done. He's going to have to play his starters more minutes. Now, tonight, not a very good example of that because they were bombs away from three. Let it fly. Hitting every three in sight. It was much the same way against Golden State. Didn't play those guys a whole lot of minutes. But over the course of the season, he's going to have to play those guys more minutes because the bench is just not quite where it needs to be yet. Does Horst force Budenholzer's hand again with this bench? He's got some young guys out there that I think can play, and you give them that time, they can play. Now, Budenholzer on the record, and again, I'm paraphrasing, saying, "Oh, well, you have to be very careful about the rotations and the guys you give time because there's some guys that have earned their opportunities." So what, the rookies going into an actual NBA game and playing well is not earning your opportunity? Is that what I'm hearing? So that's a little bit concerning. But again, you can't really break it down until you have a chunk of games underneath the belt. 4 games is not enough. There are things I'm going to keep my eye on. There are actions I'm going to keep my eye on. There are words I'm going to listen to and see if they match up with the actions. And then I'll connect the dots after we get enough games and make an assessment. A real assessment based on what I've seen, what I've heard, and what has actually happened. Not these myths and things that people like to pluck out of thin air, out of nowhere. An actual breakdown of what's actually happened. That's why it's truthful, opinionated, and passionate here on Toss. That's why it's truthful, opinionated, and passionate here at Toss Nation Media. So please, everyone, stop. Stop thinking you know what this team is going to be after 4 ball games. It is impossible to know. It's absolutely impossible to know. It really just grinds my gears. It really does. But enough of that. I think it's time to run the toss sweep. The Toss Sweep, brought to you by the good folks at TossNationMedia.com. Toss Nation Media, your home for the Toss brand of sports. Truthful, opinionated, passionate sports. It's what you deserve. The NFL regular season reaches its conclusion in Week 17. And there are a lot of high-stakes ball games coming this Sunday, y'all. A lot of high-stakes ball games coming. So what are the clinching scenarios this Sunday? Well, let's check it out. Let's go over to the AFC. Now, we all know that there are some divisions clinched over there already. The AFC East goes to the Buffalo Bills. Congratulations to them. Their first division championship in like 25 years or something like that. It's just crazy. Kansas City Chiefs have already clinched the West Division championship. They have also clinched the first round bye and the number 1 seed and home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs by virtue of their win this past Sunday. Pittsburgh Steelers clinched the AFC North Division Championship with their comeback win over the Indianapolis Colts. So that was huge of them, and they had to come way back for that one. So who has a chance at the division still, or even a playoff spot still? Baltimore Ravens. They still have a chance to clinch a playoff berth. They're currently sitting at 10-5. They have to win. It's really that simple. That the simplest explanation for them is that they have to win. If they don't, they have to hope that Cleveland loses. If Cleveland doesn't lose, then they have to hope Indianapolis loses. And then you get into a bunch of ties, where there are Baltimore ties and Miami loses. Baltimore ties or Tennessee loses. Baltimore ties or Cleveland ties, or Baltimore ties and Indianapolis ties. But the simplest path for them, the Baltimore Ravens, to make it to the playoffs is that they have to win. They hold their destiny in their hands. Cleveland, also at 10-5, they will clinch a playoff berth if they win. They have to win. Easiest path for them. If not, they have to hope that Indianapolis loses. If that does not happen, then they have to hope for a Tennessee loss, a Miami win or tie, or a Baltimore win and tie. And then you have more tie situations there. They have to hope for a Cleveland that they tie or Baltimore loses. They have to hope that they tie or Miami loses. Then they can also hope that they tie and Tennessee loses. The seventh scenario, they have to tie and Indianapolis has a tie. And then the final scenario, and I know it's a lot, the final scenario for Cleveland Browns to make the playoffs, if they don't just flat out win or get an Indianapolis loss, is that they have to tie, Tennessee has a tie, Baltimore has a win, and Miami has a win. That's why I say the easiest path, the most simple path for them is to win their ball game. That's it. The Colts, also sitting at 10-5. They still have a shot to clinch the AFC South division. They are in a fight with the Tennessee Titans. The Colts can clinch the AFC South if they win or Tennessee loses, or if they tie their game and Tennessee loses. So they have a couple of paths there. They have a chance to clinch a playoff berth. All they have to do, they have to win, but the thing is they need help. They have to win. Baltimore has to lose or tie. Here's the second one. Indianapolis has to win, or Cleveland has to lose or tie. Their third scenario, the Colts win, Miami loses or ties. And then you go through a bunch of tie situations. The fourth scenario, Indianapolis ties, Baltimore loses. Indianapolis ties their game, or Cleveland loses. And their sixth and final scenario to clinch a playoff spot would be if they tie or Miami loses. So they have a multitude of ways, but either way, they need help in every single scenario. The Miami Dolphins, they are another team that holds their own destiny in their hands. They have to win, plain and simple. They have to win. And they have an extremely tough ball game. they have a tough ball game. They have to win, period. End of story. They've got to win. But if they don't win, then they have to hope that Baltimore loses. If Baltimore does not lose, then they have to hope Cleveland loses. If Cleveland does not lose, they have to hope that Indianapolis loses. Then you get to the tie situations. Miami must tie their ball game, or have Baltimore tie, or Cleveland tie, or Indianapolis tie. Or they have to tie and hope that Tennessee loses. So a multitude of ways for the Miami Dolphins to clinch a playoff berth. Again, they cannot clinch their division because the Buffalo Bills have already clinched the AFC East. Easiest path for them is just to win their ball game. That's it. The Tennessee Titans, also at 10-5, as I said, they can clinch the AFC South by winning their ball game. That's it. All they have to do is win their ball game. They have to face the Houston Texans in order to do so. But they have to win their ball game. If they don't, they have to hope that Indianapolis loses, or they have to hope that both themselves and the Colts tie their ball games. Now, in order for Tennessee to clinch a playoff berth, if they do not clinch the division, would be to hope that Baltimore loses their game or Miami loses their ball game. Then you get to tie situations. They have to hope that they tie their ball game and Cleveland loses, or they tie their ball game and Miami ties their ball game, or they tie their ball game and Baltimore ties their ball game. Again, the easiest path for them to make the playoffs and to clinch their division, the Tennessee Titans, would just be to flat out win. That's it. Handle your business and you're in. Let's go over to the NFC. And we have a multitude of divisions clinched here, except the NFC least. But Green Bay Packers have already clinched the North Division Championship. New Orleans Saints clinched the NFC South Division Championship with their win against the Vikings on Friday, Christmas Day. The Seattle Seahawks, again, as I mentioned earlier, they clinched the NFC West after beating the Rams. So who needs to clinch a playoff spot? Who needs to clinch a division? So let's go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers also clinched a playoff berth. They can't clinch their division, but they clinched a playoff berth already. Let's go to the Arizona Cardinals. This is where it gets a little bit crazy because you have some teams jockeying for that 7th spot or that 6th spot. It's a fight down there. The Arizona Cardinals are 8-7. As I mentioned before, the Rams are going to be without Jared Goff. He had surgery on that broken thumb that was also dislocated. He's more than likely going to be out. It would be a miracle if he plays that game, but then again, you don't know how effective he's going to be with a broken thumb. He still played in that game after breaking it. He pretty much reset his thumb during the game, which, number one. But it's going to be incredibly hard for him to really grip a football, throw a football accurately. That's going to be tough for him to play Sunday, and I don't think he will. But the Arizona Cardinals sitting at 8-7. All they have to do to clinch a playoff berth is win. That's it. If they don't win, they have to hope that they tie their ball game and that Chicago loses theirs. Speaking of Chicago, let's get to the Bears, who are also 8-7. As I mentioned earlier in State to State, they face the Green Bay Packers. This is at Soldier Field, so in Chicago. They're at home. To clinch a playoff berth, Chicago has to win. They have to win. If they do not win, they have to hope that Arizona loses. If Arizona does not lose, they have to hope that both themselves and Arizona tie their ball games. Easiest path for Chicago to make the playoffs would be to win. Handle your business and win. I hope they do not, because that would mean that the Packers would not get the number 1 seed, but I digress. Or there's a big chance for it, but you know what I mean. The Packers, as I mentioned before, they will clinch a first-round bye with a win or a tie. So let's just dispel that myth. If they tie the ball game, it's all good. They win because it's not a whole loss. It's not a whole win. It's just that half a win and that half a loss, and that makes you better than the Saints and Seattle. So they have to win or tie. If they do not win or tie, they have to hope that Seattle loses their game or ties their game. So the easiest path for them to clinch that number 1 seed, that first round bye and home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs would be to win. The Los Angeles Rams, again, who will be without their quarterback, Jared Goff. They clinch a playoff berth with a win or a tie. If they do not win or tie their ball game, they have to hope for a Chicago loss or tie. So the easiest path for them to make it, win your ball game. The New Orleans Saints can clinch a first-round bye. They need some help. They have to win their ball game. They also have to hope for a Green Bay loss and a Seattle win. So they need all kinds of help because they do not have the tiebreaker. The Green Bay Packers have the tiebreaker against New Orleans based on their head-to-head matchup, I believe, back in week 3 of the season. Man, it seems like years ago. But they need help. They need to win their game. They need Green Bay to lose, and they need Seattle to win in order to clinch the first-round bye. Believe it or not, at 5-10, and now we're in Leastville, the NFC least. This is where it gets interesting. So the New York Giants sitting there at 5-10. They will clinch the division. Not a playoff berth. Not a playoff berth. The division at 5-10. They will be 6-10 because what they need is a win, and they need the Washington football team to lose. And I believe that game, I believe they're in the primetime game. They're in the Sunday night game. So they're going to be waiting all day on their fate if they do not win their ball, if they win their ball game. If they lose, it's over. But they need to win, and they need Washington to lose. The Seahawks, they will clinch a first round bye with a win. And again, they need help. They can't just win it outright just by winning. Only Green Bay can. Green Bay wins, they get the number 1 seed, they're in. Seattle clinches a first-round bye with a win. Green Bay lost, and New Orleans lost or tie. So they need all sorts of help, just like New Orleans does. Again, if Green Bay handles business against Chicago at Soldier Field Sunday afternoon, they're the number 1 seed. They get the first-round bye and home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs. And finally, because the Philadelphia Eagles were eliminated with their loss this past Sunday, the Washington football team can clinch the NFC East with a win. They are in control of that. If they win, they're NFC East Division champions at 7-9. But if they do not win, they have the hope that they tie their game against Philly, and hopes that Dallas loses or ties their game. So all sorts of chaos here, especially in the NFC least. I knew that was probably going to be the most intriguing playoff scenario because they're fighting it out for a division, and all of you are going to they're guaranteed to be under 500 that division winner. You knew it was going to be intriguing just because of the chaos involved. You hope that one of them would just get on a roll and make it look a little bit better, but that just did not happen whatsoever. But intriguing, high-stakes football all over the league, all over the nation, come this Sunday. I am more than ready for it. I cannot wait to see who does what. Hopefully a Green Bay Packers victory. They can have a week's worth of rest the following week and get ready for a divisional round game. But high-stakes football, there is nothing like it. I am excited. Well, y'all, that'll do it for me. This was episode 63 of the Tristain Sports Show Toss, and the final episode of the year 2020. Man, it's been a hell of a year. It's been a rough year for all of us, but like I said, if you're listening to this, you're still standing, and I'm happy about that. Y'all know where to find me on social media. At D20Double. That's at D, the number 2, the number 0, and the word double on Instagram and Twitter. Toss is on Facebook. Facebook.com/T-On Sports Show. That's T-O-N Sports Show. TossNationMedia.com. Your home for the Toss brand of sports. Truthful, opinionated, passionate sports. It's what you deserve. But as I said before, it's time for me to get on up out of here. Happy New Year to all. This is T-Squared. Tristain Thomas reminding all of you to keep it moving forward. Always forward. Forward always. Until 2021. So long from Toss.